Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, thanks for joining us for a new episode of the Ajay Bruno Show. My guest today is Danny Tarkanian. He's a businessman, ex-attorney, and seasoned political candidate from Nevada, currently running for Congress there. Hello, how are you?
Hi, good. I apologize for the misunderstanding or mix-up.
No problem. We're glad to have you on. Before we get into politics, I want to talk a bit about your background. You, of course, come from a legendary basketball background. What was it like growing up around that? And despite being drafted by the Spurs, what made you ultimately chart a different course other than basketball by becoming a lawyer?
That's a good question. I've been asked that question. What was it like growing up under, as the son of Coach Jerry Tarkanian? Probably more than any other question in my life. I just don't have a different answer. I don't know. I don't know how it would be otherwise, so I can't compare it. It seemed normal to me. People obviously knew me through my father, and they were following the team, and they'd always ask about the run of Rebels and so forth. I just thought it was something that was normal, and it was certainly enjoyable because there was interest in my dad's profession, and certainly they were having an exciting team, so there was a lot of excitement around the questioning. I certainly do understand, though, because you see the people rise into the top and then quickly fall into the bottom, how quickly things can change, and you don't take anything for granted.
Sure. So you then decided to go back to basketball as an assistant coach at Fresno State for years. What was that experience like, and what made you determine to go full-on into politics rather than continuing with the coaching career?
Yeah, I was actually, as you mentioned, I went to law school and I practiced for 7 years. I just didn't enjoy being a practicing attorney. I didn't enjoy sitting behind a desk writing up documents. And I wanted to be more active and more interchanging with people. My father got the job after about a 3-year period from when he left UNLV. He got the job at Fresno and knew it was going to be his last coaching stint, and I wanted to be there with him and be a part of it and help him any way I could. And when he retired in 2002, I believe, or 2001, his last season, I didn't have a desire to continue coaching, at least as an assistant at that level. I just got married and had a wife. You just don't make a lot of money and you're gone all the time. I'd always wanted to get into public service. My mother was a city council, was a school board member, then a city councilwoman, and I've always followed the political spectrum since college when Ronald Reagan was our president, and a really great governor in California, Governor George Deukmejian was there, and they were my inspiration. But I never felt comfortable talking in front of the public. I've always had a fear of speaking in public, which is not good for a politician. No. So I put it off. But I got to be in my early 40s, and I said, if I'm going to ever do what I really want to do in life, I got to get over that fear. So I threw my hat in the ring and got into some tough political races, but it was what I wanted to do.
Sure. So as you moved to pursue some of these political aspirations, what experience do you think best prepared you for that? Was it your time in law or something else?
For the campaigns or for public service?
Both.
Well, for the campaigns, I think what prepared me the most was my sporting experiences, mostly basketball, but some in football growing up, because campaigns are really just very, very intense competitions. They have some different rules. I mean, there's basically no rules. It's like all balls out, ball. You can go out and say anything you want, and you get away with it. But it's the competition that distinguishes it. And I was learned, work ethic, how to handle adversity. I also learned, unfortunately, but because it was tough growing up this way, I learned how to handle criticism from not only myself, but others around me, because a lot of the national media criticized my father because he took a lot of at-risk kids and brought them into this basketball program. So I learned how to handle the criticism that is so prevalent in the political arena, and I think that helped a lot too. But public service is something I got more from my mother, and as I mentioned, those two role models of mine, not only President Reagan, but George Deukmejian and Senator Paul Laxalt here in Nevada. I thought what they were doing was one of the greatest use of one's life, making positive impacts for other people in your city, county, or country. And I thought that was a great way to make a living and leave a lasting legacy.
No, I definitely agree. So in your last race 2 years ago, you came extremely close to winning but came up short. What lessons did you take from that experience that you hope to apply this time?
Well, the first thing I learned is, the most important thing I learned is you need to respond back to these, and I'm going to use the word defamation or defamatory ads. They're certainly deceitful and dishonest. We didn't do that last election. I had won a defamation lawsuit in 2009 on some spurious attacks against me in a previous election. And the lady I ran against in 2016, she ran the same ads. And we didn't respond to them. Our national consultant and polling company said the ads weren't hurting me, and if we responded, we would give it credibility, so we didn't. And we end up going from leading most of the race to losing by 1%. So this election, when they come out with these type of ads, and they'll probably change them up a little bit, but they're going to still be dishonest ads. That's what they do in politics. We're going to respond like Donald Trump did last election. We're not going to let one attack go not responded to, and we're going to come back and hit harder. The second thing is, we got to make sure we have a better ground game and get more people turned out on our side to the polls. In the whole state of Nevada, the Republican Party didn't get their people out. There was a split between the top of the GOP leaders who came out against candidate Trump and the rest of the voters in Nevada on the GOP side that wanted to see candidate Trump in office. And because the top of the GOP in Nevada was against him, they didn't come out and vote for anybody else, including myself on the congressional ballot.
Oh, that definitely has a negative impact all across the ballot. So I agree. Your original plan, though, was to run for Senate this year, but you refocused to run for Congress. Were you personally called and asked to do that, or did you consider the suggestion after an endorsement was made publicly?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was going to run for the Congressional District 3 seat again, the one that I lost by 1%, and I was getting prepared to do so. I was the only federal candidate in Southern Nevada that supported candidate Trump in the last election. Dean Heller, the senator, was against him, came out and was a never-Trumper. So while I was preparing to run for the congressional race, Dean Heller came out and voted against the repeal of Obamacare. So the Trump supporters in Nevada, they recruited me to run against Dean Heller. They said President Trump needs somebody in Washington, D.C. On the Senate side that's going to support him, and Dean Heller won't, and we know you will. So I got into the Senate race, and we were doing very well. I thought we had a real opportunity to beat him. But I got a call first from President Trump, and we missed each other, which to me that was just an honor to have a left message from him. And then he had his political manager, the new guy he just hired, call me up and tell me that basically he said, I just got off the phone with President Trump. He's on Air Force One. He would like it as a personal favor to him for me to drop out of the Senate race and run for the congressional race. We would be able to win both of those seats. It would help us maintain control of both the Senate and Congress, and we can get the America First agenda passed. I did not feel that was the right decision, because I had a lot of people that had invested time, energy, and money into me and my Senate race. I didn't want to let them down. But when the President of the United States and the leader of your party asked you to do that, I thought that was a right decision. I felt I should do it, and that's why I switched from the Senate seat back to the congressional race.
Mm-hmm. So looking forward, which issues do you think are most important to Nevadans and for Americans at large that need the most pressing level of attention?
Well, I think the people all throughout the country are concerned about the immigration situation. They want to see the borders protected, whether it's with a wall or some other type of technology that we can maintain strict control over who's coming in and what products are coming in, and to keep the contraband out and the bad people out. So that's something and then you got to revise the rest of the broken immigration system, meaning the chain migration, where we allow third cousins to come in and other relatives that are distant relatives. And we need to implement e-verification, where employers have to verify the legal status of everybody that they employ to work for them. So I think that's a big issue. I think national security is a big issue. You see so many things that are going on that could, just one of them that flips over, can really affect the entire world, and with North Korea and with Iran. and so forth. So those are issues. The issue that mostly people care about the most, but I think they're so happy with it right now, it's not as pressing, but they certainly don't want to see a change, and that's the economy. For so long here in Nevada, from 2007 to basically 2000 and maybe 14, 15, we were really, really struggling. There high double-digit unemployment, highest foreclosures in the country, bankruptcies were one of the top in the countries. We got it going now, but we just don't want to see it turn back around. We don't want to see the progressive approach of more burdensome regulations and higher taxation and longer waits to get projects built to take effect again, because we saw how damaging it was to the Nevada economy.
Well, I can imagine that. And getting back to the first issue you mentioned, the immigration one, one thing, there's always talk about, potentially building a border fence. I think that a high-tech electronic fence on the border would probably be the best way to go, but there's not a whole lot of attention paid to that. What's your view on that, and how would you approach the issue?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think if there's some areas where a real border wall is the best approach, and then let's do it. But it certainly can't be across the entire border. There's going to be areas that isn't, and it may be just as efficient and more cost effective to do what you just had said. With respect to where we're at technology now, we can create the same type of security at a much lower cost. I just don't think it sounds as good as rhetoric, and that's why people aren't talking about it. It's a political issue right now that both sides are on, and when you say build a wall, it resonates with people, or when you say we're not going to build a wall because that's not our type of country, that's what the progressives say, that resonates with their voters. So I think this is more of a political issue, but when we finally do get this thing done, we got to use whatever's best technology-wise.
No, I would just hope from a practical point of view, they would say, on the other side, on the left side, they're pointing out that, they don't want to have a physical barrier, but why not do the same thing, with technology, and then what's their complaint at that point? So I would think that's a way to get around it, but they don't really seem to be using that.
Well, that's a good suggestion, and something that I think a lot of us that are running should be possibly using.
For sure. One thing I like is your support for term limits. There are so many career politicians who entrench themselves in power and have to be dragged out of office, if ever.
Yeah.
What are the chances this problem can actually be fixed in the near future?
Well, if you get the right people in Congress, it can be fixed, because for this to be passed, you would need to vote for it in Congress and get it passed, and then all you would need is 2/3 of the states to ratify it. But if Congress themselves passed term limits, what state would vote against it? I mean, Congress themselves think it's right, so I think it's something that certainly is feasible. The problem is you get people that go back there and they love the power, prestige, and influence they have, and the glamour they have by being a congressman or a senator. They don't want to give it up. They don't do what's best for the people. See, that's what public service is about. You serve with the best interests of the public, not what's in the best interests of you. And too many people in Washington, D.C. have it backwards. You just got to get people back there that understand. We need to make the right decisions for our country, not us personally.
No, I agree completely. And one thing which they've really dropped the ball on, we now have over $21 trillion in debt. I mean, the irresponsibility of this is just almost unbelievable. How can we possibly get rid of this mountain of debt at any point when we keep spending ourselves and even more of it?
Yeah, it's very, very disappointing. The omnibus bill that was passed was, considering we had control of Republicans in both the Congress, Senate, and the White House, it's inexcusable. We're not going to get it under control if we don't make tough decisions. This is what happens, though. Every time you make a suggestion to cut something, the left will demonize you as you're against whatever it is you're cutting, as opposed to just making real good common sense decisions of what's most important for our country and what's not. There was no concern on the people on the left of our monetary system and the currency and what's going to happen. I'm a big believer, and you understand the supply and demand issue, how you can continue to print money like we've been printing money, and when that gets released into our economic system, how that is not going to have skyrocketing inflation and devalue the dollar. And when it devalues the dollar, who gets hurt the most? The poorer people that have less money. It's the wrong thing to do, and we need to get there and make some tough decisions and get it changed.
What they're doing makes completely no sense, like you said. And I think both sides have really failed on this, and it would be nice if someone would just push them to actually be responsible on this issue, because it's just getting out of control.
It absolutely is.
Sure.
So I think that's probably our biggest long-term issue. It's what's going to happen to our currency.
It's a serious problem for sure. And more on the social side, you're also pro-life, of course, and we're one Supreme Court justice away from overturning Roe v. Wade. What are your expectations and hopes for this issue in the near future, and what would you like to see? And would you like to see a human life amendment as a possible solution?
Well, I am a firm believer that life starts at conception, and I feel the most vulnerable of anybody, or the unborn children that have no voice in what's happening to them. And I'm going to be a staunch defender of theirs any way I can.
Great. And you're also, of course, opposed to radical leftist views being pushed in our military. I'm really concerned about things like the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy and sodomy ban being lifted. Do you think it's realistic we can put the moral values back in our armed forces that we've lost over the past number of years?
I don't know if we could get back to the moral system that our country was built upon in today's society as a whole, let alone just the military. I believe the people that are running the military have got to have say in how it's run and what's in the best interest of their soldiers, and I support their decision-making process and getting the political divide out of it.
Mm-hmm. It's just been so politicized in recent years, and despite what the top generals and the Joint Chiefs said, it didn't seem to matter, particularly in the last administration when a lot of this is being done. And I think it's just a real travesty, because once you lose the military, that says a lot about the rest of society, too.
Absolutely. So our society is, it's amazing how far we've gone. And to question it, we're just demonized on the other side. I got 3 young daughters, and that bathroom issue where, they're saying, well, if somebody identifies as opposite sex, even though they have the body parts of a different sex, they can use the same bathroom as my 3 daughters. And I just think that's completely wrong, and how our society got to that point, I can't understand.
No, and I think the whole thing is definitely spiraling out of control here. So another issue which the government's really failed on, I think, is the continued denial of the Turkish genocide against Armenians, and that's one, of course, which is you hold close.
Yes.
We've tried to skirt around and dodge this, and until recently, it seems that Turkey's been considered such a treasured ally of the U.S. How do you reconcile American values with the unwillingness of the government to boldly proclaim and condemn this as the horrible act of genocide that it was?
You got to get somebody in office that understands that it's important that these things are recognized so they never happen again, even if it causes short-term friction between what is perceived to be allies, and I'm not even so sure how close allies we are with Turkey. Every president campaigns on the promise that they're going to recognize the genocide, and then they get in office and they're persuaded by whatever special interest group is out there to say, hey, we can't do that, we can't make Turkey mad at us. I would just tell you, from my standpoint, it's very important. My grandmother escaped the Armenian genocide. She was a very young girl when the Ottoman soldiers rode into the village. Her mother sewed coins in her dress, put her on a horse, and got her out of the village before her father was beheaded, while he was forced to watch his eldest son beheaded, and then he was beheaded. The rest of the villagers were herded into a church and burnt alive. How we fail to recognize that after 100 years is disgraceful.
No, it's absolutely terrible. And do you think this administration will actually do that, or what are your expectations with that?
Well, President Trump said he would, and he made a movement in that direction, but not far enough. So I don't know. I don't think anybody who has a personal interest in, like a family member, like I mentioned, have any high hopes right now.
No, it's terrible. What are some of the foreign policy issues that you're most concerned about for the country right now?
Well, I mean, obviously the North Korean situation is very important, but even more so than that, I think the Iranian situation. We just cannot allow them to get a nuclear bomb, and you wait too long, we're going to be in a worse situation than we are now with Korea, because Iran has already made it clear they wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and when we defend Israel, that's going to be a nuclear war between the parties if that takes place.
No. Well, with North Korea, there's a talk of that summit coming in the next few weeks. Who knows if that's going to actually happen? But I don't think you can trust anything they say, and that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I agree.
No. With North Korea, what if you were making the decision? What course of action would you suggest with that? Because especially, if we were to consider a military option, they have so many missiles aimed at Seoul that it would be catastrophic. So it's such a quandary up there.
Well, that's the problem, because we've already allowed them to get the technology, the nuclear technology to just destroy millions of people, and now it's hard to stop it. It's hard to prevent that militarily wise once they already have it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's for sure. So you have a primary coming up. Is there anything you want to add about that, and what it will take to be successful both in this and then hopefully in the general election?
Well, the primary, I should be in really good shape. We did some polling a few weeks ago. I was up over 20 points. We did some polling just yesterday, and I was still up over 20 points. Unfortunately, I get some opponents that just go negative and try to. Again, they can say almost anything, and it's not true, but it ends up being believed by some of the voters. And when you experience that in a primary, it carries over some to the general election, and that's what we're trying to prevent as much as possible right now, so that we come into the general election at full strength. The general election is just going to be a bloodbath. The Democrats have targeted this as one of the top races in the country. I believe the Republicans have also. And last election, it was the most expensive race in Congress. $18.5 million was spent in it. Almost all of it was in negative ads against me, at least from their side, and we had to respond to them. We just got to do a better job responding to them. We got to get a better job of getting our voters out to the polls, and if we do, I think we're going to win.
No, that hopefully will be the results. I'm a bit concerned with Nevada as a whole, though, because obviously this was a state, that trended more to the red, and then it's been going the other direction. So do you think that's just a reversible trend from some sort of failings from a strategy point of view, or what do you make of that phenomenon?
Well, there's so many Californians that are coming in Nevada, and they come in and they leave California because they don't like what's going on there, and then they come here and they vote to keep the same type of government out there, and it's ridiculous. It is a trend towards being blue. It certainly isn't there now. If you look at the non-presidential elections, Republicans have always done much better than Democrats, but every presidential election, the Democrats do better. They turn out voters at an alarmingly high rate during the general elections. They haven't done it yet in a non-presidential year, but there's a lot of important races here in Nevada this cycle, and I anticipate they're going to do everything they can to get a turnout like they did in the last presidential year.
No, I can imagine they would do that. But great. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add and let people know before I let you go?
Sure. I just, if you want to learn more about me, I'm one of the few candidates. I put up all my policy positions on the website. You can learn more about my background. If you go to the website, it's tarknv.com. So tarknv.com. And if you email the website and have a question, I answer virtually every one, or at least as many as I can get to.
Great. That's something I wish more did, because a lot of campaigns, or especially when you're elected in office, it's almost impossible to get a hold of anyone, and so it's good to see that you do that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Great. Well, it was a pleasure to speak with you again. I hope you have a great success in the primary coming up and after that, and I hope I can be helping flipping that district this time around.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. Me as well. Take care.
Bye.
That was Danny Tarkanian, candidate for Congress in Nevada, and so we covered a lot of issues, and hope you got a lot out of that, learned more about him and some of the problems occurring today. So once again, this is our show for now. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode as usual. guest to be announced, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And don't forget to follow the Twitter account as well. That's at Reagan Worldwide, at Reagan Worldwide. You can get lots of interesting information from there and learn more about the show, past episodes, present, future, and, of course, lots of good conservative and other tidbits are on there as well. So until next time, this has been Ajay Bruno, and so long for now.